Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young man. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hey everyone, my name's Luke and I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, but currently in Phuket in Thailand for a bit of a work slash leisure holiday. And my business Personify is all around helping people to reach more people online through strategic and purposeful content. Now, what that really means is not just random arbitrary content for the vanity metrics, but rather purposeful content that reaches more people online through many formats such as YouTube videos, carousels, short form videos, text-based content, and beyond. So my goal is to really help people to spread their mission, to spread their purpose with a wider audience online, with the end goal of, it could be drawing more customers. It could be leaving a legacy behind. It could be also just wanting to share what you're doing with the world. So that's a bit about what I do and probably a good summary of what my business does as well.
So, Luke, it's fascinating that you are in this space. The concept of personal branding has gained a lot of traction recently. In your opinion, why is personal branding so critical for leaders looking to make a positive impact?
If you look at some of the biggest businesses out there at the moment, and they're big because there's a person behind it, an example of this would be Elon Musk, right? And whether you like him or not, that's up to you. But we can learn from him, which is he's built up multiple, billion-dollar companies and some million-dollar companies. They're all very large through his own personal brand, right? Now, obviously, he had a starting point, and he's where he is right now after hard work and obviously working in those businesses. But a lot of the revenue that's driven into his companies is from him as an entity. If you look at the amount of followers that he has on his platforms as an individual versus the companies that he works with or works for or works in as a leader or an investor of some sort, they're way less in following, right? So as the world moves away from logo-fronted businesses and more to individuals, it becomes more imperative to have a personal brand there. Another example of it is Richard Branson. It would be also figures like Kim Kardashian. The list goes on. There's so many figures out there that have grown their business exponentially just from having a personal brand.
That's fantastic. So with a diverse team behind Personify, how do you ensure that all your team members' voices are heard and that their perspectives contribute to your clients' personal branding strategies?
Ooh, good question. I think the most important thing for me is that, so we have a system that we use, right? It goes through finding the content, the right content to use, which is the strategic side, to the graphics, to the video editing, to the copywriting, and then to the uploading. So everyone has their own unique skill set and flair in what they do, and also contribute in that sense, right? So there is a more holistic system, which right now I'm overlooking, but every individual has their own part that they're doing, which is, it brings clarity, right? Because when we first started, it was everyone doing everything. And same with business owners out there who are currently doing everything. They're doing the graphic designing, they're doing the copywriting, they're doing the video editing, they're doing the uploading, and they're also running a business, and they're also doing finance, and they're doing operations, and they're trying to grow their business in sales. So we try to take away all the problems of creating content there. So with the team in general, we're still refining it, but in long story short, everyone has their individual roles, so to speak. So it brings clarity and brings, how would you say, a feeling of responsibility over that one part of the process.
That's fantastic. So, can you give us an insight into how your podcast, Getting Mental, complements your mission at Personify, and what kind of conversations you aim to promote through the podcast?
Well, I started this business out of necessity because I was doing my own personal brand. Yeah, I've walked the walk and I'm talking the talk now as well. And I've gone through the process of building my own personal brand, which then led me to getting people who wanted to work with me with their personal brand. So I built my own up. And in that process, for me, as a naturally curious person, I've always been intrigued by uh, the deeper questions in life. It could be anthropology, it could be psychology, it could be neuroscience, it could be human nature, it could be healing trauma, things like that. And that's what I speak about on my podcast. I invite guests on who have an interesting background. Doesn't matter if they're qualified in a certain degree or another. They just have an interesting background, and I have a conversation with them. And how that ties into what I'm doing with Personify is I'm doing a personal brand, right? I have my own personal brand. I have the podcast, I have the business, and all these parts, all these elements bounce off each other to create an ecosystem of branding and business.
Now, you've created quite an impressive digital footprint, online with regards to what you've done with your own brand. I know some people just kind of fall into it, but it looks to me like yours was very deliberate.
Oh yeah.
Give us a step-by-step process of how you did this. When I went in and Googled your name, you were all over the place. Give us some of your strategies. How does one create a online presence like yours?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to be consistent. That's the first thing, right? But in order to be consistent, you need to be passionate about what you're talking about. So many business owners out there, they hate creating content because they're creating the wrong content. And what I mean by that is if someone's passionate about basket weaving, then create content on basket weaving. It's as simple as that. If you're passionate about cosmology, for example, then do that. If you're passionate about cleaning or lawn mowing, then do that, right? You can't create consistent content unless you have a consistent passion towards the subject matter you're talking about to drive that content. So for me, this was a passion project far before it was a business, right? I remember sitting in my room, and long story, I'll go back to the start just really quickly. I
Yes.
left my job at the time, and I decided to myself, I said to myself, for so long I've been trying to find my passion. What's my passion? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Instead of trying to find my passion, I said to myself, I'm going to let my passion come to me, right? I've tried so hard to get to this point of like, this is what I'm supposed to do. What if I just let go and let it come to me? After a few months, I started to, and I've always been reading books since I was 14 on neuroscience and psychology and various things like that. Eventually, it came onto me. It's like, I'm just going to create content. I was going through a breakup at the time, and I started to post content. It wasn't that good. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't, at least by my perspective now. And I just kept posting. And I did it because I loved doing it. I had this artistic side to me that wasn't being fed, and also this intellectual side. So I merged the two together. I started creating content. And I remember sitting in my room at the time. I moved back with my parents because I wanted to fund just creating content nonstop. I remember saying to myself in the room, I said, I prefer to be homeless than making $1 million a year in a job that I hate. I would never, ever do that again. So, like I said, the second thing is being passionate about what you're talking about. Again, if that's something that's weird and uniquely you, then do it. I think to a degree we don't choose our passions. I think that life or God or whatever it might be chooses it for us. So those are the two steps, and then the third, having a right strategy, having the strategy in place that allows you to do what you love in creating content and gets you results. Right. That means how are you editing the videos? Is it engaging? Is it capturing? Then fourth, that's to be determined. I think that from there, it's kind of for each individual to decide.
Your real wealth lies in the things that you're passionate about, right?
Truth.
It sounds to me like you managed to find yours. So one of the things that I noticed on your TikTok account, you have a tagline which is very, very interesting that says endlessly curious. What has your curiosity done to lead you down the right path, do you think?
I think curiosity is a double-edged sword. You have the curiosity that drives you to want to learn the why behind things and the way they are, but there's a pervasive curiosity that takes you over, it almost consumes you. And what that curiosity is needing to know an answer when sometimes you don't need an answer. Sometimes you need to let go. So it's led me to both places. It's led me to creating content. It's led me to building a personal brand. It's led me to learning about the psychology and my background and my childhood and the things that I've been through and what that means for the world and myself at large. But it's also led me to some interesting places at the same time. So I think that curiosity should be cultivated, but there also has to be a mechanism of letting go when one needs to.
So, collaboration is a key in any creative business. Can you discuss a time when your team's diverse skill set came together to solve a complex problem for a client?
Ooh. There's one client in particular who is a psychiatrist, and the subject matter of it is quite complex. He's teaching other psychiatrists how to fill the gaps in what they haven't learned in school and in their practice. So the subject matter is quite complex. So the way that we got around that is we built out, and this is something we do now consistently, we built out a brand guideline that allows us to see exactly, what is the feel for this page? What is direction? What language should be used? And we created different assets that can be used as templates on different styles of posts. Not one template, not two, but multiple templates that work along with a specific source of the content and with a specific style. So to keep it really brief, I think the main thing is that uh, the problems you're facing when it comes to content isn't necessarily a solution of how would you say editing better or editing more efficiently. It's more what's the premise, what is it surrounded by, where is the context of the style of editing you're doing and the personal brand you're building, and what's the brand guidelines around that, what's the mission, what's the value. So that was something that we learnt from being challenged in that domain, and the solution was creating a brand guideline.
Fantastic. Now, when somebody is embarking on this journey and they are in a position that is very, very traditional, you know, some industries are conservative,
Mm.
where perhaps personal branding is not yet the norm. How do you approach the personal brand of a leader who operates in a very traditional or conservative industry?
Would you say an example of that is they're in a corporate job where they can't say certain things? Is that what you mean?
Yes, and they're kind of bound by the confines of the work environment they're in.
Well, like I said about passion, you can't put a price on passion. So if you're there's two things, there's two elements to it. If you love the job that you're in and you're in a corporate space and it's your biggest joy, then create content on that. You don't need to go outside the realms of that to be successful in personal branding. You just need to be A, passionate about it, and B, know what you're talking about, which comes from experience and comes from contemplation, refining your ideas. But if you can't share what is in essence you, then is that job for you? Now, I don't mean leave the job, but I mean rather, and again, we can get to the side of like, okay, I love my job. I want to stay there and I want to speak about stuff that maybe is controversial or rather isn't suited towards the industry that I'm in. Then you have to obviously get to a point where you're not going to say those things online. That would be my only solution, but I'll be questioning what it means to you and what it means to your soul is a word maybe, what it
Yeah,
means to your heart, because we can speak logically about the solutions like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but everyone knows that suppression of one's free speech is probably the worst feeling possible, and
yeah.
I don't imagine that's something that's conducive in the long run.
Now, when you work with ethnic people, take myself, for example, I try by all means to show up as being African first. One, I can't run away from my chocolate brown skin, but it does give me a bit of an edge and a point of difference, right? Why is it important for people who are different to celebrate their differences when they're creating their own brand?
Well, it's important because I think everyone has something important to share. I don't think that I believe that what matters is the character of someone and what they're sharing with the world. And what I mean specifically by that is, regardless of how you look, like your opinion is valuable, and there's no question of, oh, this person's this or this person's that. To me, it's like, what is the value of your content, and do you want to share it with the world? So that's the most important thing I'd share.
And then in selecting what colors, what fonts, all of the elements that make up a brand,
Hmm.
talk me through the process that you would take a new client who has no idea what colors are going to work, what fonts, the style
Hmm.
that they're going to go through.
So we have a 9-step system that we go through to bring that out, right? Because the answers are there within the person. The energy, the feeling they have inside them is, in essence, them. We go through a process to really bring that out, right? So the first thing we do is define. That means defining what their core message is, their mission, their reason, what legacy they want to leave behind. The second part, the second step, is creating a follower avatar. So once you've established who that person is at their core, who do they want to reach? Who are they speaking to? Is it someone, not just demographics of age and those kind of things, but also uh, who are they as individuals? Like, what do they like? What do they feel? The psychographics as well. The third part is creating what I call a digital home, right? So any environment someone is in, there's always a digital feeling that you have. When you enter someone's space or someone's house, there's going to be a feeling that you have in their house versus someone else's. Someone might be really eclectic and really different. Someone might be very plain and refined, like with lots of black and whites. Some might have, Russian, Soviet paintings all over the walls and be interested in history or something like that. So we define what that means for someone's social space and how does that connect across all 10 platforms, even 11 now. There's one more coming along. And how does that integrate as well? So that's the third part. The fourth part is getting super clear. So we create the digital home, we create a brand guideline, then 5, a content strategy that relates to that. That's just 5 of the 9 steps. But
Mhm.
we do all those things before we even think about touching content, because content is informed by the individual before it's informed by my opinion on what it should be.
Hmm. So, how do you decide which platform to play on, which platform to focus on? Like you've said, now there's 11 different platforms.
Mm.
How do you make that decision as an individual?
Well, the first thing is you trial them all out, right? You don't make assumptions based on one's preconceived notions of what's worked, right? I could post a Snapchat and I could reach 200,000 in 2 months. Doesn't mean that the same person's going to do the same. So what I mean by that, or rather, a different person is going to do the same thing. So what we do
Mhm.
is we will start by posting on all platforms initially. We have a centric profile in our minds on what will work the best. So, for example, if someone's uh, you know powerful on LinkedIn, they're doing more corporate stuff, we might look at more as LinkedIn as the approach. If it's Instagram, then it might be more like informal content. If it's YouTube, it might be more long form content. So what I'm saying by that is we have a central platform that we create the content around, but we
Mhm.
post all platforms to test what will work and what won't work.
Fantastic. And again, depending on your demographic, some
Mm.
demographics tend to attract certain people, certain age groups, correct?
Correct. Exactly. And also, like, just because there's more of an age group on one platform doesn't mean that none of the age group we're aiming towards doesn't exist on that platform. It's just about getting them in front of your stuff, right? What that means is, like, we had a client who said, "I want to post on Snapchat. It's for kids and all this kind of stuff," which it isn't,
Yeah.
by the way, because it was for kids 10 years ago when it came out. It's not for kids now. So we started posting on there after 2 months, 200,000 views on the platform. So
Wow.
the moral of the story is that we don't assume and then act off that. We challenge assumptions and then we create a plan around the results of that challenge.
So, for our listeners who are just starting out on their journey to build a personal brand, could you share one piece of actionable advice that they can implement today to begin making that positive impact online?
Find what you're passionate about. If you don't know what you're passionate about, think about what would you speak or do in front of a camera for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, without it feeling like a burden, or what would you do? A better question is, what are you doing day in, day out that you enjoy doing, irrespective of anything else? So, like an example of this is, if you come home and you start playing chess on your phone, and you're a really big chess fan, maybe you start a channel on chess, right? Maybe you don't care about chess enough to do that. Then what's the next thing that you might do? The biggest issue that I see with content and personal branding is that people are trying to create content to get to a certain result, as opposed to allowing it to fuel them to be the person they want to be. So if you're creating content for the reason of like, I want to make money, it won't last unless your passion is actually making money. Then you can speak about your journey on making money, for example. There's so
Yes.
many in the world of social media. There's, what population are we now? I think we're 7.5 billion now, or something close to that. Everyone has their unique audience. Followers aren't the metric. It's impact that's a metric. You can't measure impact by, oh, I reach this much people. You can, but not exclusively. It's like, how do you make someone feel with your content? How you bring relationship with your audience? And if that's something is, unique and strange, as say, like I said before, basket weaving, or you're interested in, motor vehicles, where it might be, pursue that first, because that will feed your soul and that will drive consistency, which will then lead you to better results.
Mm. Now, once you have all these followers following you on the different social media platforms, how do you convert them into clients? How do you harvest their emails? Because it's not enough just to have followers unless you can at least engage with them in some way. What are some of the strategies to convert?
Absolutely. Besides doing things like with the content, again, you don't want to saturate people with call to actions like do this or do that. You want to add value first, and then then push them to a certain direction. What I mean by that
Mhm.
is, maybe one post a week, or one every 2 weeks, is like an exclusive promotional piece of content. Here's what we're doing in my business. I'm loving doing this. Again, promotional, not meaning you're purely promoting like, do this, our course is amazing, and this is what we do, but rather specifically, you're talking about your experience in something and saying, hey, like, we've got some really cool stuff happening, visit here or visit there. That's one way.
Yes.
But if I'm being transparent, my business is more about creating the content and the personal brand, as opposed to driving sales specifically. We're building trust and authority, so then the sale becomes easier. So converting the sale, getting to a landing page, all those things, that wouldn't be what we do. But we do drive some interest through to websites and things like that, through doing promotional pieces every couple of weeks or every week or so, depending on the client.
Okay. Now, to go back to your own personal story, to that young
Mm.
man who knew you were in the wrong job, you were hating what you were doing, and you made that decision that this
Hmm.
is what you wanted to do. If there
Hmm.
is another young person listening to this podcast right now, is in the
Mm.
same position, trying to convince his parents or her parents and not getting any success,
Mm.
what would you have wanted somebody to have said to you when you were starting this journey? Give us three nuggets of wisdom to another aspiring content creator out there who's sitting on the fence and not sure which way to go.
Well, yeah, I think the first thing, that the most important thing, is that, well, I mean, if someone told me that, I wouldn't probably listen, because I was younger and I had my own agenda and my own prerogative. But if I were to offer some kind of value for someone who is listening and who is younger, it's first and foremost, contemplate. Now, I say this specifically for younger generation, because we're spending so much time on these things that we've lost the ability and the benefits of contemplation. Now, what that really means is that, and there's a part of the brain, right? When we contemplate, we release ideas, we get new things going in our minds, we define different visions and goals. But if we're spending our time on this all the time, right, which you can spend a lot of time on this, but rather go for walks, contemplate, think about what you want to do, think about who you want to become, contemplate. And if you contemplate, you leave room for inspiration to come to you. And that one thing is often the difference between being in a career that you don't like and a career that you do like. The second thing is just start, right? Don't worry about the specific nature of like, oh, like Luke, look at him. He's editing his videos like perfectly. I started editing my videos. Go back to my Instagram, go all the way to the bottom and look at some of my content. You'll see how bad it is, right? I started somewhere. Every single person you see around you, and again, this is a huge thing for young people. Everyone online that you see, like all the trending videos that come through, all the popular videos that come through, those people didn't start there. No one started from from 1 million subscribers or 1 million followers or $1 million in the bank or anything like that. Everyone started from a place of no views, no engagement, low amount of money, right? That's what business is. And if you can learn to, one, contemplate and let inspiration come to you, because that's what will drive you and fuel you, and two, think long term as opposed to short term. I mean, specifically like 5, 6, 7 years into the future, you're setting yourself up to win, right? Those are two things I mentioned. And the third thing, if I had to offer one, it would be around, and this is part of number one, letting your passion come to you as opposed to you trying to find it, right? And that comes from silence and stillness, right? Which is an extension of mental health. So meditating, taking time to, again, contemplate, let your passion come to you, because that will fuel you. And if you don't have a passion, again, let it come to you.
I love that last one, because you're really talking here about being in a state of flow where you're not pushing to make anything happen, right? But if you're in the right place at the right time, it's very, very magical how things can just fall into place without you doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times we're trying too hard to make things happen, and then it gets frustrating and you feel like you're not getting anywhere. So, jump in there.
It's almost, yeah, sure. I was going to say it's almost like a spiritual practice. And,
Yes.
as much as that word is, how would you say, contentious to some degree or another, you have to, there is inside of every element of life, even science, there's a level of intuition and spirituality. And I think that once we embrace that, we recognize that we sometimes don't control the pivoting of our lives. Now, what I mean by that is like if you let your passion come to you, and again, you really step back and you say like, okay, I'm going to see what inspires me. I'm going to really listen to my body, listen to my mind, and see what inspires me. I'm going to stop trying to push all the time, because if you're a type A personality like I was and like I am, then you're always pushing, like I need to push.
Yes.
On the path of pushing, you lose the direction of where you're supposed to go. And if you learn to let go and let inspiration come to you, that'll be the answer to most of the problems that you're experiencing, in my opinion.
I love that. That's really good advice. Now, the future is in AI right now. How can individuals harness the power of artificial intelligence in creating content and getting their brand out there?
Know when to utilize it, know when not to utilize it. There's a higher price and a higher return on authenticity. The moment you start using AI to govern who you are as an individual is a moment you lose that connection with individuals. So I'd say the best advice is knowing when to not use it as opposed to when to use it, because captions, copywriting, people are getting pretty savvy with it. They can see when something's written by AI. It's becomes quite obvious. So let your authenticity shine through, and let AI be the facilitator of that as opposed to the director of that.
Fantastic. So, where do you see yourself in the future, Luke? Let's say if I was to interview you 10 years from now, what is the vision of where you will be in 10 years' time?
I would like to be running a business that has AUD making $1 million a month. I want to do that in the next 2 years. I can see myself making long form YouTube content based on in-depth topics. For example, a video that I recently did on my YouTube is called The Myth of Mental Illness. You should check it out. And it goes in depth behind where mental illness arises from a health point of view, and how it's exacerbated by these things. I see myself doing more of those. I see myself contributing more to being a thought leader in the space of things happening in the world and offering a different perspective, and growing my business alongside that. Because the reason I started this business, again, was out of necessity, first and foremost. But secondly, it's because I'm in the space as well. And I love sharing ideas. And I think ideas lead to conversations, and conversations lead to change. And change leads to a better world, hopefully.
Fantastic. So now let's have a little thought experiment to finish off our interview. And I'm going to teleport you into the future. And you're going to have a conversation with a 90-year-old you. And you're sitting on your porch, surrounded by your children, your wife, your partner, whoever is there with you at the end. If you could teleport into the future and have a conversation with this wise man who's led you to that point, what would you say to him based on how you're living your life right now?
There's nothing more important than sanity. And what I mean by that is your life and who you are, the architecture of your psyche and your life is mostly conducted by you. And I don't mean you as in your conscious choices. I mean you as in who you are in this moment from the experiences you've had. And we can choose to go back in time through healing trauma, through doing trauma work, through meditating, through contemplating, through journaling, through doing different things like that, and change the arc of who we are. And sanity is the most important thing. I don't mean sanity as in like you're not crazy. I mean sanity in the sense of you don't push yourself into sticky situations because you have a thrill for it. Now, you don't push yourself into stress. You don't push yourself into toxic relationships and things like that, because that will drain you. It will drain you. It will take away from you. So the message from 90-year-old me to me right now is prioritize your sanity, prioritize your mental health, to use a rather perhaps overused word. But in translation, look at your past, look at your childhood, look at how you perceive things, not neurotically so, but rather to heal oneself and then heal the earth by extension, because it all starts from within, and the very fabric of who you are can be altered.
Fantastic. Luke, thank you so much for coming online and sharing with us today. I look forward to catching up with you in a few years' time to see where you're at. I can see you have a vision and a goal that you are really going to achieve. It's very, very inspiring to see. Thank you so much for this interview. And
My pleasure. Thank you to
everybody who has come online today to listen to the Diversity Connector. We are attracting people from all walks of life, young, old, middle-aged, sharing their ideas. So come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing person. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thank you, Luke. That's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely